You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Three Things to Know. I'm your host, Stephanie Haney, and I am very excited because today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, love. I just love love. You know, I root for it in all forms, in all shapes and sizes. I really want love to prevail when I see it just budding between two people, between three people, between four people, whatever your situation is. I'm a big fan of love. And I'm not alone. According to a 2017 study by Statista Research Department, 94% of Americans believe in love. And a 2019 study by the same group that was on attitudes towards love and relationships says that 42% of Americans agreed with, I believe in love at first sight. They agreed with that statement. So people believe in love. They think it can happen in an instant. And the early stages of love definitely can happen in an instant. But research shows that if you want love to last, you have to work at it. Just like many things, anything that you want to stick around for some amount of time takes a little bit of an effort. But sometimes it's hard to get on the same page with someone who you love, and communication is really key. And if you can't seem to communicate with someone that you love, what's one thing you can do? You can bring in an expert to talk to about it. Now, of course, we don't all have access to experts, but that's where this show comes in. Today, I'm talking with the man who literally wrote the book on having successful relationships, Dr. Gary Chapman. And here's his book right here. It's called The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. This book has sold tens of millions of copies. It's been translated into dozens of languages. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list continuously since 2007. And Dr. Chapman is a counselor. He runs marriage seminars. He really knows his stuff. So if you're not familiar with the love languages, we're going to get you familiar with that so that if we find ourselves in a situation where we do maybe experience love at first sight, or we're in kind of those early stages of love, we have our best opportunity to make that last. So let's bring him in to get us in the know on this right now. Dr. Chapman, thank you so much for joining me on the Three Things to Know podcast today.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's good to be with you.
Love is a very popular topic of conversation, especially this time of year. And one of the premises behind your book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts, is that it's easy to fall in love, but it's staying in love that's the tough thing. Why do you think it's so easy to fall in love and also out of love?
Well, I think, what we call the in-love experience, it's not something we have to work at. It just happens. We use the word chemistry. There's something about that person, the way they look, the way they talk, the way they emote, that just stirs emotions inside of you. It's a natural phenomena that draws people together. And when we're in that euphoric state, we want to be together all the time. When we're away, we're thinking about each other. We can hardly wait to get back to see each other. In our culture, we pretty much given the idea that if you've got the real thing, it's going to last forever. That's what I was told. Mm-hmm. What we now know is it has an average lifespan of about 2 years, and we come down off the high. And no one told me that. And my wife and I had been dating for 2.5 years before we got married. I came down pretty soon after the honeymoon. And I thought, man, I don't have those feelings. And then our conflicts started to arise, and we ended up arguing with each other. And then I had negative feelings toward her. And I didn't know that that's a very common experience. To me, I was just totally disillusioned. But having been counseling people for 40 years, I found out many people go through a similar experience when they come down off that high.
Well, we're very thankful for your wealth of knowledge and experience in this area, because this is all a lot of stuff that I've never heard before, and I'm sure a lot of people have also never heard before, and you've made this your life's work, so we want to pick your brain on all aspects of it. You talk about the stages of love. Can you talk to me about that and the science behind them?
Well, I think there's two fundamental stages. There is that euphoric stage over which we don't have a whole lot of control. It just happens. And then there's the intentional stage. That's when we come down off the high. And then we have to learn how to communicate love to each other if we're going to continue to meet that emotional need for love. Everybody agrees pretty much that the deepest emotional need we have as humans is the need to feel loved by the significant people in your life. And if you're married, the person you would most like to love you is your spouse. And if you feel loved by your spouse, you can process everything else in life much easier. But if you don't feel loved, if what I call the love tank, if the love tank is empty and you feel like they don't love me, they wish they weren't married to me, and I don't like this either, the marriage goes downhill. And that's what happens to thousands of marriages. But if we understand the love language concept in this second stage of love, that now it has to be intentional. And now I have to learn what meets that emotional need for my spouse. And it likely will be different from what meets my need for emotional love. And we tend to do what comes natural for us. For example, when I first got married, I gave my wife words of affirmation. I didn't know anything about love languages, but I did know that when people gave me affirming words, I felt that they cared about me. So I told her how nice she looked, how much I appreciated what she did. I probably told her a dozen times a day, I love you. I am so glad I married you. I love you, love you, love you. And one night, probably, I don't know, a few months into our marriage, she said, you keep saying I love you. If you love me, why don't you help me? And I was blown out of the saddle because in my mind, I loved her. In her mind, if I loved her, I'd be helping her. So as I said, I knew nothing about love languages, but she was really telling me that what makes her feel loved is different from what makes me feel loved. If she had given me words of affirmation, I would have felt loved. She didn't because she didn't feel loved. She wasn't giving me love. So, I think couples miss each other. Even in the early stages when they're sincere, they miss each other because they think that whatever makes me feel love will make them feel loved. And that's not true.
That is such an interesting point, and I want to come back to that in a little bit. Before we dive into that more specifically, though, I want to talk about just the 5 love languages in general. So after your years of experience with counseling, you've developed the theory that the reason a lot of relationships or most relationships don't work out is because people aren't speaking that same love language, or they're not understanding the love language that's being spoken at them. So let's go over the 5 love languages. First, tell me about words of affirmation.
Okay, words of affirmation is simply using words to affirm the other person. Such things as, you look nice in that outfit. I really appreciate what you did. One of the things I like about you, it's simply using words to affirm the other person. For some people, this is what I call their love language. Words of affirmation speak deeply to them. You can focus on the way they look or what they've done, their personality. You can focus on anything that you really appreciate about them. And you verbalize that, and they feel appreciated and feel loved. Okay. And then there's acts of service, which is what my wife was begging for. Why don't you help me? And this is such things as cooking meals, washing dishes, vacuuming floors, washing the car, mowing the grass, walking the dog, changing the baby's diaper. Woo, that's a big one there. Just doing things. You remember the old saying, Stephanie, actions speak louder than words. If this is their love language, actions will speak louder than words. See, I was using words with my wife. They weren't speaking very loudly. But when I started washing dishes and vacuuming floors, it spoke loudly to her.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, so that's those are the two. They're words and acts of service. Then of course there's gifts. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. The gift says, they were thinking about me. Look what they got for me. And the gift doesn't have to be expensive. We've always said it's the thought that counts. But I like to remind people, it's not the thought left in your head that counts. It's the gift that came out of the thought in your head, okay? And for these people, if you miss giving them a gift on their birthday or on Valentine's Day or on, any other special occasion, they're going to think, how could you love me and not think to get me something? I mean, it's going to hurt them deeply. And then they also want gifts not only on special occasions, but you think about, you just see something they would like and you get it for them and give it to them on any day of the year, and it communicates love loudly to them. So there's gifts. Number 4 is, these are in no particular order, but the quality time. Giving the other person your undivided attention. I'm not talking about sitting on the couch watching television together or both of you on your computers. Not talking about being in the same room. I'm talking about if you're in the same room, you're not watching television, the computers are down, you're not answering your phone, you give the other person your undivided attention. You're looking, you're listening, you're interfacing with them. Or you could be taking a walk down the road and doing the same thing, or going out to eat, assuming that you're talking with each other, which doesn't always happen, as you notice in restaurants, where they sit there and both of them are on their screen across the table from each other.
Yep.
Quality time, and then physical touch. We've long known the emotional power of physical touch, affirming physical touches. In a marriage, that's such things as holding hands and kissing and embracing and the whole sexual part of marriage, arm around their shoulder, driving down the road, you put your hand on their leg, sitting around the house and they walk by and you trip them. I'm kidding on that one. Don't trip your spouse.
Okay.
And the basic idea is that out of the 5, each of us has a primary love language. It's very similar to spoken language. Every one of us grew up speaking a language with a dialect, and that's the one we understand best. I grew up speaking English with a Southern accent, okay? And that's the one I understand best. So just like we have a native tongue, we have a native love language. And if we learn to speak the other person's language, we can keep the emotional need for love met. We can keep the love tank full. And then we can enjoy and process everything else in life much easier.
And it is possible to speak more than one love language, right?
Yes. For many people, number 1 and number 2 will be very, very close. That means that both of those are going to speak really, really deeply to them. And let's face it, we can receive love in all 5 languages. I mean, who's going to turn away from any one of these? So what I say is you speak heavy doses of the primary and the secondary if it's very close. You sprinkle in the others for extra credit. But if you don't speak the primary or the secondary, they won't feel loved, even though you're speaking some of the other love languages.
I also like the way that we're talking about this in terms of, I think a lot of people think of the love languages and they kind of turn inward. They're thinking of, what's my love language? How do I feel loved? But I appreciate the way we're talking about this in terms of speaking it to the other person, really translating things into their love language.
Yeah, now it's important to know your own love language, to be sure. So in a close relationship, you can share with each other, this is what really makes me feel loved. This is my love language. Now, the other person has the choice to love or not to love. I had a gentleman say to me some time ago, he said, Gary, my wife and I read your book, and then we took the quiz, and she told me that her love language is acts of service. He said, but I'll tell you and her, if it's going to take my washing dishes and vacuuming floors for her to feel loved, she can forget that. And I said, that's your choice. Love is a choice. If you want to live with a wife who has what I call an empty love tank, that's your choice. I said, I much prefer to live with a wife who has a full love tank. I said, I've lived with both. Same woman, okay? Early days, empty love tank. Latter days, latter years, full love tank. I said, I much prefer the latter woman. That's why I wash dishes and vacuum floors and take out the trash. And she tells me that I'm the greatest husband in the world. And I said, I know that's hyperbole, but it makes me feel good.
And then you get your words of affirmation. So
Absolutely.
It's a nice little cycle you have going there.
So learning to speak the other person's language, that's the heart of the book, The 5 Love Languages, is teaching you how to effectively communicate love to the significant people in your life, whether you're married or whether you're single.
Now, I can't help but wonder while we think about this, what determines our personal love languages? Do we have any say in this at all?
I really can't answer that question. I've heard the question many times. Is this nature? Are we just born with it? or is it nurture? Does it happen in the early years? I do know this. You can discover a child's primary love language by the time they're 4 years old, sometimes earlier. Just observe their behavior. How do they respond to you and other people? For example, my son's love language is physical touch. He's grown now, but when he was that age, I would come home from work. He would run to the door, grab my legs, and climb on me. He's touching me because he wants to be touched. Our daughter never did that. At that age, she would say, Daddy, come into my room. I want to show you something. She wanted quality time. She wanted my undivided attention. So it's there very early in a child's life, just like some other personality traits are there very early. So whether it's nature or nurture, I'm not sure. I just know it's there early.
Is there any trick to, I know you said now we can discover a child's love language by observing them, but we can't observe ourselves necessarily so easily all the time. We might not necessarily have that self-awareness. So what's a good trick to figuring out what your own love language is?
Well, I think if you give thought to it, what I just said is one way. That is, you ask yourself, how do I normally respond to other people? For example, if you realize that you're often giving people encouraging words, then that's probably your language. If you're a gift giver and you're just giving gifts, regularly to people, that's probably what you want, because we tend to speak our own language. Another clue is, what do you complain about most often? For example, the wife who is saying periodically, honey, I just feel like we don't spend time together anymore. I just feel like we're ships passing in the night. She's complaining that quality time, she's not getting quality time. If you go on a business trip your spouse goes on a business trip and comes home and you say, you didn't bring me anything? You're complaining. Why didn't you think about me when you were away? So your complaints is a good clue to your love language. And then what do you request most often? If you're saying to your spouse or to a friend rather regularly, honey, can we take a walk after dinner? You're asking for quality time. If you say, could you give me a back rub? You're asking for physical touch. So you put those three things together, observe your own behavior, what do you complain about, and what do you request? You can pretty well figure out your language.
Now, we've talked about this a little bit, that people seem to sort of default to giving love in the same way that they receive love. Kind of tied to that, how common is it that two people who genuinely love each other actually speak the same love language?
It does happen. It's not very common, but it does happen. But even if they have the same love language, they will likely have different dialects within that language. For example, a lady told me some time ago, she said, Gary, my husband and I have the same love language. I said, wonderful. What is it? She said, acts of service. But, she said, the things that I want him to do to help me are different from the things he wants me to do to help him. So same language, just different dialects, because in all these languages, there are different dialects or different ways to communicate each of these languages. And typically, because none of us are exactly alike, and even if we have the same language, we'll have different aspects or different dialects of how to speak that language.
A lot of times when we think about love, we are thinking about, am I feeling loved? How can I get the love I need? But, a quote that is pretty common, something that I kind of return to, is that love is really about the other person. Yeah. And it is important to know how your partner likes to be loved. That's one side of the coin of the conversation we're having here. Tell me about the love tank game.
Well, you can say, once you understand this concept, that we have an emotional love tank. I use the gasoline tank in a car. If it's full, you can drive a long ways. If it's empty or almost empty, you're not going very far. And we have an emotional love tank. And so periodically, and not every day, but every couple of weeks, you might say to your spouse, honey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how full is your love tank? And if they say anything less than 10, you say, what could I do to help fill it? And they give you a suggestion. And now you know what would make them feel loved. Now, you do that and keep a record of what they answer. It'll also tell you their love language, because their answer will fall into a similar category over and over again. There'll be one that'll be more predominant than the others. This is just a way of keeping this concept, once you both understand it, keeping it on the front burner of your mind. You're just checking in to see, how's your love tank? And what could I do to help fill it? That communicates to the spouse you genuinely care, because you're asking. And this is just an easy way to ask, how are we doing? How am I doing? How are you feeling loved? So it's just a fun way to do it. I think many couples have found that little exercise to be helpful.
You do mention, though, there are times when maybe your spouse is not so amenable to having that conversation. Maybe they're upset with you, or they're not super in tune with what it is yet that their own love language is. We've covered this a bit, but just to go over that again, what do you do if you can't get your spouse to play along, or your partner to play along with you in that love tank game?
Well, obviously you can't make someone talk about something. You can't make someone love you, but we can influence them. And love stimulates love. See, some people will say, well, I just can't change my spouse. I mean, they've heard about the kind of love language. They don't even want to talk about it. And I can't change them. And that's true. You cannot change your spouse, but you can influence your spouse. And we often fail to recognize the power of positive influence. So let's say you know their love language. So you choose to speak their love language on a regular basis, whether they reciprocate or not. It's unconditional love. You're reaching out to speak their love language. Because you are speaking the language that speaks to their heart, and their emotional love tank begins to fill up, there's a good chance that in time, now I'm not talking about 3 weeks, okay? I usually say in really bad situations, I say, give it 6 months, okay? And within that 6-month time, chances are they're going to begin to respond to you, because you're meeting the deepest emotional need they have, the need to feel loved. And one day they're going to say to you, you've been treating me awfully nice lately. And I'm realizing I'm not much of a husband to you, or I'm not much of a wife, and I think I failed you. So tell me again, what can I do to make you feel the way you make me feel? You'll have that kind of conversation somewhere before the 6 months is over. I'm not guaranteeing it'll happen every time, but a high percentage of people respond to love when they're receiving it in their language unconditionally. See, we tend as humans, we're all self-centered. We tend to be selfish, and we tend to have the attitude, I'll love them if they'll love me. Well, love is a choice. The emotion is not a choice, because people say, well, I don't feel love for them. You don't have to feel love for them. Love is an attitude. I want to enrich your life. I want to make your life easier. I want to help you accomplish the goals that you have in your life. That's the attitude of love. And you express love to them in a meaningful way to them. And love stimulates love. So it's the most powerful thing you can do to influence a spouse is not sit around waiting for them to join you in discussing love languages or speaking love languages, but for you to speak their love language unconditionally over an extended period of time and see what happens.
It really is about not being the person or being the person who's not afraid to love first and really put yourself out there and be in that vulnerable position.
Yep, absolutely. Take the initiative.
And we've talked about, it's not necessarily super common for people to speak the same love languages. What do you do in that situation that you talked about? Well, in one situation that you talked about, if someone's love language and the way they give love is just totally foreign to you, or the way that they receive love is totally foreign to you, like they want that acts of service, but just the thought of doing dishes makes your skin crawl, and that's not going to feel great. Or they love gifts, but you don't see the value in that, but you do love them and you want them to feel loved. What do you do there?
Yeah. Well, if their number one is your number 5, that is the least important to you, is the most important to them, there'll be a learning curve. But here's the good news. You can learn to speak any one of these languages, even if you did not receive them as a child. You can learn to speak these languages, again, because love is a choice. And so you're saying to yourself, I know how I feel, when they speak my love language. I can't imagine that receiving gifts would make them feel this way, but that's what they're saying, and I'm going to believe them. So I'm going to learn how. And you can learn how to speak anyway, either one of these. Maybe you don't know how to give gifts. Ask her sister, what do you think she might like? Or ask her to make you a list of the kind of things that she would like. So you have information on the kind of thing that would be helpful to her. So it takes effort, yes, especially if it's your least important, because you just can't imagine why it would be important to anyone. But it is. And it's just as important to them as your love language is to you. So it's a matter of attitude, and it's a matter of choice.
I want to go back to what you talked about at the very beginning of our conversation when you said that you were giving your wife words of affirmation, and for her, it just wasn't resonating. What is your recommendation for how to communicate that to someone? I'll go back to the gift giving again, just as an easy example. If someone is showering you with gifts and you're appreciative, but that's not filling your love tank, what do you think is a productive way to let someone know, I appreciate what you're doing, but it's just not doing it for me?
Well, I think if the two of you can discuss this concept together, whether you read the book together or you take the quiz together, there's a free quiz at 5lovelanguages.com you can both take if your spouse is willing to take it as well. Mm-hmm. If you talk about the concept, to say, here's a book that has sold 15 million copies in English and been translated in 50 languages around the world. Would you be willing to read it with me or read the first chapter with me? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they will. That's the best thing is if both of you can get exposed to the concept and in the book see examples of how this has changed marriages for couples. I mean, I've had scores and scores of people that say, Gary, this changed my marriage. It saved my marriage. So if the two of you can have a discussion about the concept, then it's much easier for you to bring up the fact, or maybe she says to you, or you say to her, honey, I can see now, I've been giving you gifts because that's the way you express love. I've been giving you gifts, but I don't think that's your love language. Let's take this quiz, or let's talk about this. That kind of discussion is what really leads to changing a marriage, when both of you are open to the concept and open to the idea that maybe what we intended to be communicating is not getting through very well.
It sounds so simple, but it can be so challenging. It
well,
really can.
Yeah, it is a simple concept. It's not simple nor necessarily easy to actually follow through with it, but it pays tremendous dividends. When you say to yourself, I'm going to learn how to do this. I remember a man who said to me, Dr. Chapman, my wife and I read your book and we took the quiz, and she said her love language is words of affirmation. He said, I don't know how to say things like that. He said, I never got words of affirmation growing up, and I don't know how to say things like that. And I said, well, tell me 3 things that you really appreciate about your wife. And he thought a minute. He said, well, she's a good cook, and she's a good mother, and she's a good school teacher. I said, okay. So I wrote out 3 sentences, 1 sentence on each of those. For example, on the cook, I wrote out, honey, I haven't told you this much at all, but I really appreciate all the meals you cook for us. You're a good cook. I just wrote out simple sentences. I said, go home and stand in front of a mirror by yourself and read these out loud twice a day, every day this week. He came back and I said, okay, can you say them without looking at your notes? And he did. He stumbled a little bit, but he did. Mm-hmm. I said, now here's your assignment. You go home and once a week, you take one of these this week, one next week, and one the next week. And you just walk up to her. You choose the time and you just say them. 1 a week. He came back in 3 weeks. I said, did you do it? He said, yeah, I did, Dr. Chapman. I said, how'd she respond? He said, on the 3rd week, she said to me, what's going on with you? I've never heard you give me so many compliments. And he said, well, honey, I'm just trying to learn how to express love to you because I really do appreciate you. And she said, that is so sweet. I love you. Aww. He said, Dr. Chapman, she hadn't said that in a long time. So what I'm saying is, you take baby steps. You can learn these languages, and if you understand how important it is to your relationship, hopefully you'll be motivated to make the effort.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot comes from the fact of, being with a partner who's got the best intentions. And that's what we're assuming here, right? Everyone has the best intentions. You want the person that you're with to feel loved. Just got to figure it out and how to communicate that to each other.
And when you do, it makes all the rest of life much easier to process. You'll still have conflicts because we're human and we don't think the same way and we don't have the same ideas. You still have conflicts. Every couple has conflicts. But if you feel loved by each other, the love tank is full, you can solve the conflicts because you're far more likely to listen and respect the other person's ideas and thoughts and feelings.
I've got one more age-old question for you before I let you go, Dr. Chapman. If it comes with so many challenges, why are we so attracted to opposites? Why is that?
Well, I don't know the full story on why opposites are attracted to each other, except that we do tend to like things in the other person that we don't have in ourselves. For example, maybe you're a very kind of withdrawn person. You're not really an outgoing person, and you see this other person, and they're just so free to reach out and start conversations with people, and you admire that about them because you wish you were more like that. So I think that's part of what's going on when opposites attract, is that we see something in the other person that we really would like to be more like that ourselves. I don't know what the whole story is, but it's true that in many cases opposites do attract, and even when it comes to how we express love, and that's what we're talking about here.
Well, thank you for all of your tips and insight today, Dr. Chapman. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Good to be with you.
Great insight there from Dr. Chapman to get us more in tune with what makes us feel loved and how we can let our partners know what makes us feel loved, and also how we can figure out how to make our partners feel loved if that's not something that they're having an easy time communicating with us. And again, you can take that quiz. 5lovelanguages.com is where that's at. It's the number 5. I'll also have that linked in the show notes, of course. Not a bad date idea, while we're all sort of staying in and maybe not going out as much as we otherwise might. That might be a unique thing that you can do to bond with your partner. Speaking of date ideas, we're going to keep on the theme of love here. And to get us in the know on what we need to know in NEO when it comes to great date ideas, we bring back our anchor and reporter, Jasmine Monroe. Jasmine, welcome back to the 3 Things to Know podcast.
Hey, I'm glad to be back.
And a special honor to let you know about, you are our first repeat guest for our Need to Know in NEO segment.
Thank you.
Because you have the inside scoop for us, and we are here for it. We are talking about dating ideas today.
Okay. So I do have some great ideas, but I'll let you ask me the questions first before I start just rattling off stuff.
Well, I have to ask you about something that I saw you do recently. It was this very cool painting experience. And of course, if you're listening to this, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you are seeing this incredible, colorful backdrop behind Jasmine. Tell us about that.
So this place is absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you, my boyfriend and I, we love to do different things, and we just got tired of the painting with a twist, and, not saying anything is wrong with that, but if you haven't tried it, it's definitely fun. But we have so many paintings in the house with painting with the twist. It's just like, it's too much. So I always I'm a rage person. I tried the Rage Room. If you guys are looking for something fun to do with date night, that's out in, I think that's the Akron area. Mm-hmm. But this is called Pinspiration. This artwork is literally splattering paint all on a canvas. You and your partner can go in a room, a closed-in room. You go inside of the building with your mask on, but once you get inside of the room, you can take your mask off and you can start splattering paint all over the canvas. And that's how we turned out with this lovely painting. If you're watching on YouTube, of course. But it's fun. I was so ecstatic. Stephanie, you have no idea. If you have a friend that you would want to experience this with, they had champagne, they had chocolate covered strawberries, and
Ooh.
The service was amazing there. It's rare for me to just go on this tangent, but I was just I'm going to do Instagram Live. I have to tell the world about this. So that's how excited I was about this business.
Well, it caught my attention. I was like, okay, we need to know more about this. You have to come on. You have to tell people about this. This looks so fun. And the piece of art is so beautiful. How big is that, just out of curiosity?
Okay, so I don't know. I don't actually really know the size, but I'll say it's not a huge canvas. It's not small either. I want to say it's 27 by something. I can't.
So
but
you could carry it. It's not something you got to worry about not getting in your car.
Yeah, it's about as big as your picture right behind you, to the right of you. Well, to the left of you, down. But it's the thing that I liked about it was she explained to you like the less is more concept, you know? So just splattering paint is fun, but it's like you have to have some type of thought process. What are you trying to go for? We didn't have like a thought process. I just knew that I had to control my boyfriend because he's just like, I'm like, that's enough. So, and when you mess up, I think it's just like something that I learned in art class, like just put white on, if the canvas is white, just throw white on it and you can go over top of it. So I was saying that a lot, like just like a lot.
Just throw white on it.
Yeah, just keep throwing white paint on it. Just keep throwing white paint on it. Just so if we're hanging this up, because it's going to be in our game room downstairs, I'm like, I don't want to look at something that's like wild.
Well, it is beautiful. I'll say that. The reason I asked you how big it was is because I've got a big old blank space on my wall, and I'm thinking,
oh yeah,
maybe I need to get myself one of these.
You definitely go. I've told Austin, if you guys don't know who Austin is, Austin Love, he's one of the fellow reporters on the morning show with me. He is supposed to pick up my canvas. So I don't have it yet. I asked him a long time ago to pick this up, and I'm still waiting. I texted him yesterday, like, dude, where's my painting? I'll go get it myself if I have to. But he said he's definitely going to bring it. We're supposed to meet up downtown and do a quick exchange.
Do the handoff. We do know Austin Love. Austin Love was a guest of ours on here as well. He came in and told us what we need to know in NEO a couple weeks ago. Jasmine, how did you find out about Pinspiration?
Listen, when I tell you, whoever does their advertisement on Instagram, it was on my phone every day. Like when I woke up and I'm scrolling through and it's like, you should try Pinspiration. You should try Pinspiration. Then I went on Facebook. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I get it. And then I was like, I really do want to do this. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? Or are they telling me? So I was kind of like, you know, how you don't want them to control your mind, but I'm like, yes, I have to do this. And it was worth it. And I told the owner there, I was like, your advertisement is A1. You have to pay more, because what you did is you got me out to Avon, because I'm from the east side over here. That's a little ways away. So it was definitely worth it. It was definitely worth it.
That makes sense. That also makes sense to me now why Austin is picking this up for you. So you don't have to go back to Avon to grab it.
I'll go back out there. I always, when I first moved to Cleveland, I was like, east side, west side, we really don't go. And it's like, oh no, seriously, like, because I used to live downtown and now I'm on the east side. And now I'm like, there's no reason for me to be on the west side anymore if you don't live over there. So it's definitely a tale of two worlds.
It is a thing. It is a thing for sure. Well, this looks great. I think this is an excellent idea. Jasmine, thank you for sharing this with us. How can people get into this Instagram feedback loop of the advertising? How do people find Pinspiration?
Do you think it's weird that when you talk about something and you feel like your phone is listening? Well, it's actually really listening these days. Instagram actually just did an update that it's not so much controlling your thoughts, but know what you're looking for and what you're interested in by the things that you search on Google. And, you know, the algorithms line you up for the advertisements that you do see. So that is a real thing.
So what you're saying is people need to play this podcast next to their phone, and then they'll connect with it.
That's it. And then it'll pop up. I guess you can't even see it on here because of the green screen, but it says Pinspiration on here.
Okay. Yep.
On Instagram, but it's just Pinspiration on Instagram and on Facebook too. So definitely worth it, especially around Valentine's Day. And I think they just expanded their location inside. So definitely worth it.
So more space for all that splattering. Yes, this is a great timing. We're all talking about the love today, and Valentine's Day is a great time for that. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jasmine. And of course, I'll link all of that in the show notes so you'll be able to find it very easily. And Jasmine, before we let you go, a congratulations is in order. I want to say congratulations to you for being the newest co-host of We the People.
Thank you. That was so sweet of you, Stephanie. Yes, it's been very great. And hanging out with Leon, learning from Leon and the team, Rosalind and just Margaret, everyone, Tatiana. Thank you they just took me right in. So it's
and Leon Bibb is a legend here. If you're from the Northeast Ohio area, he's a need to know in NEO. Absolutely. As is Jasmine. Jasmine, let people know where they can watch We the People.
Okay, so all you have to do is tune in on Fridays at 12:30. And it's just on air. And then you can check out some clips on Instagram. You can follow us on wethepeople.com or We the People on Facebook. Just check us out.
We'll also link that.
All right.
Thanks for being here, Jasmine. Appreciate it.
Bye.
I really do love that date idea at Pinspiration in Avon. I do think, though, I might need something a little bit bigger for the space on my wall that I'm trying to fill. The picture that Jasmine was referencing, because we do these conversations over Zoom, so she could see a picture behind me. So if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast, that one is about 27 by 20. I know that because it's a puzzle that I had framed that I did early on in the pandemic that took me quite a while to do. So of course I had to frame it. But I'm thinking maybe I can go to Pinspiration a couple times and do a little montage of those paintings. So I'm definitely going to be thinking about that. Also, make sure you check out We the People. You can follow We the People on Instagram as well at We the People WKYC. Again, of course, I will link that for you in the show notes. As we just said, Jasmine is the new host of that with our Leon Bibb. Great show. You should absolutely check it out. All right, now it's time for this week's A Good Follow. And I am happy to tell you about a personal friend of mine. Her name is Jacqueline Collette. She goes by JC. And she is a great follow on Instagram. She's got a couple of accounts. She's a matchmaker and an experienced strategist. Now, in her matchmaking, she focuses on entrepreneurs as her clients, but she does accept other daters to be matched with the entrepreneurs who are her clients. So if you check her out and you're interested in maybe connecting with her in that way, you can do that. She's a Cleveland native here. She splits her time between Cleveland and San Diego right now. You can follow her personal account on Instagram at jc.matchme. That's where you're going to get more of her personal musings and her personal stories and lessons learned from people and connecting and the experiences that she's had. Her business is called Beside Every Boss, and that's also the Instagram handle, Beside Every Boss. And I absolutely love the idea around the name of this account. We've all heard that quote, behind every powerful woman, behind every successful man, behind. Well, this account is called Beside Every Boss because the focus is on finding your partner and your equal and walking through life beside each other, and sort of this idea that there's no settling required, there's no power dynamic at play, everyone is on equal footing and sort of walking through life's journey together. The vibe of these accounts is sweet but savage, a very you can do it, don't settle mindset when it comes to dating, but also an acknowledgement that we are making choices here and kind of a gentle reminder of what are you doing? The things that you allow are the things that you are choosing, and we kind of need to take accountability for that. One thing that she does with these accounts that I particularly love is Tough Love Tuesday. So on Tuesday, she's posting things that are really kind of that best friend shooting it to you straight that you really need to hear from time to time. And if you don't have that in your life, you can get it at one of these accounts. So some of the things that she focuses on are the love languages, of course, the Enneagram personality typing system, so things that go along with that, and also the Myers-Briggs personality type stuff. We've all seen those things. Those things are cool to see if we've taken those tests and kind of figured out where you fall in those different categories. And the focus of these accounts is education, entertainment, and empowerment, and compatibility along the way. So definitely check that out. Again, those accounts are jc.matchme and Beside Every Boss on Instagram. Highly recommend those follows. It's a little uplifting, a little tough love, a little reminder that we are making our choices and we are in control of what happens when it comes in our lives in our love lives, and what have you. That's it for this week on 3 Things to Know. Next week, we continue the love talk because it will be right around Valentine's Day. We'll be talking about attachment style. So this is just another piece of the puzzle when it comes to helping us understand how we act in relationships, how our partners act in relationships, what we can do to come together, communicate better, and figure out how to find harmony and to find that lasting love. And for that, we'll be talking with the Cleveland Clinic's Dr. Amy Sullivan. She's a psychologist there, so you're not going to want to miss that one. If you're liking the show, I would love it if you would give it a rating and a review. Let me know what you're thinking about it. Shoot me a message, _Stephanie Haney on both Twitter and Instagram. And also, share it with your friends if you think it might be helpful for them. Sharing is caring. That's it for this week. I will see you all back here next week, everyone. I'm Stephanie Haney.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.